Jeremy, first and foremost, we've kind of touched on some of your discussion points on Facebook and social media where you've shared some of your issues at hand. Why are you so concerned in the first place? And why are you making those concerns public?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I've got a unique perspective on this. I go all the way back to my time as mayor here. 2016, we had a pretty large scale campaign to pass the renewal of the food and beverage tax. And one of the things that I was very adamant about was making sure that we did that in a way so it would not sunset, because I felt like that revenue stream was really important to the city of Grand Island, really into perpetuity. And so we might as well be honest with the taxpayers about that. And I also was I thought it was very important for us to earn the trust of everybody that those funds would always be used in a very prudent manner. And so, with that being said, the city brings in about $3 million per year from that revenue source. And one of the things that I was really adamant about was that money would be held separately, not into the general fund, and be used primarily for purposes of bringing additional visitors to the city of Grand Island, but also helping out Parks and Rec and some of those departments to, I guess, kind of brush up a lot of the amenities that we already had. And so, I guess the course of time then passes, and then I was on the State Fair board as well, and during a really tumultuous time. And, we were going through a lot of different things. One of them was COVID. We had a lot of water problems. We had a lot of issues with the executive director leadership, board members, all this stuff. I mean, I really stepped into a hornet's nest. And when I did that, though, I also had a lot of time during COVID to go through a lot of the financials of the State Fair. And one of those things was we found that we had an employee that was taking money from us, led to charges. But there was a whole lot of other things that really made me uneasy about the way money was being spent, procurement policies, all of that. In fact, so much so where I reached out to Governor Ricketts' team and said, you got to find a replacement for me because I just don't want to do this anymore. I can't be associated with it. So that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, if you will. But I've been relatively quiet about things for the last 5 or so years and just kind of let it be. But this recent situation really was the burr under my saddle because it brought all of those different things into the same fold. When you've got, so the State Fair received $20 million of grant funding to do infrastructure work, which, obviously was needed there. But $20 million, Dave, is an awful lot of money. That was, that's half of what we would run the general fund budget on for the city of Grand Island. And so when you think about the level of that type of money, there should be more than enough to get a lot of really good things done. And so when I saw that, I thought, okay, good. They're finally going to be able to address a lot of this stuff. And so I was supportive of that. But then as time kind of went along, find out that they were coming to the city council and asking for an additional $2.6 million. And it was to kind of top off that project. And it really, kind of caught my eye like, wow, $2.6 million, again, a lot of money, because the state of Nebraska and the city of Grand Island already annually give the State Fair about $3 million combined just for operating expenses and those types of things to help offset and really to help grow the fair. And so when you've got already an enormous amount of money coming in annually, you've got the $20 million that you've got in the bank, and you're coming in asking for another 2.6, it got my attention. And then when I found out that, all of the stuff behind the scenes about the purchase of the Bronx property, that really, I would say, kind of lit the ignition a bit for me. And as I dug into the details, I didn't like what I was seeing. I wasn't getting the information that I wanted. And so I knew how to go about doing that. And I actually did a FOIA request, and I received all of the internal emails for a significant period of time. And the things that I found out, Dave, it just blew me away. And so because of that, I thought it was really important, number one, to let the city of Grand Island know, the people of Grand Island know specifically. And I'm hopeful that the city of Grand Island, the city council, the administration denies the request for the additional 2.6 million. That's ultimately what this is about for me, because $2.6 million can go a really long way to doing things, other projects in the city. I'm not saying that the state fair isn't important to the city of Grand Island. It is the complex is very important to the city of Grand Island. But when you see how poorly they've run their finances and some of the decisions they've made, I don't think they deserve the additional 2.6. And so I guess that's basically in a nutshell, kind of what got everything going. And I'll let you kind of guide the conversation from here now.
Certainly a big nut if you're talking about all the backstory that leads up to this particular moment in time. When you look at the $2.6 million request, what would you say you'd rather see the money spent on if we're not going to use it for security purposes, for an improved parking lot, et cetera, as the State Fair says they were going to use it for?
Yeah, well, I guess the way I would look at it is take it a step back further and say, does the Nebraska State Fair really need that money from the taxpayers of Grand Island? I'm not saying that the security and the things that they're asking for are not important. I'm saying that if they would have budgeted and used their money properly, they wouldn't have to be asking the citizens of Grand Island to kick in the additional money. So, the Bronx property, great example of that. There was the idea behind that was that the Bronx were selling. The State Fair wanted to make sure they secured the parking access for the trailers and some of the stuff that's stored there. Very important to the operation of the fair, no question about it. It's also property that we leased from the Bronx annually for $23,000 per year. And so when I look at that and I say, okay, well, $23,000 a year, apparently the Bronx didn't want to sell just that part of it. If I'm being honest with you, there was only one buyer for that Bronx property. I think the Bronx knew that. The State Fair ended up bidding against themselves and dramatically overpaid for this. They ended up getting stuck paying $4.25 million for the piece of property. So they kind of got, in some ways, I don't know if I want to say held hostage on this, but through the FOIA request and through email conversations with Jaime Parr and a realtor, the realtor just flat out said that it was valued at 1.75 million, maybe 2 million max. And shortly thereafterwards, the fair made an offer for $2 million, but ultimately settled on a price of $4.25 million. So they asked for the professional opinion, got it, but completely disregarded it and still paid $4.25 million for a $2 million piece of property. So the way I look at it is they overpaid by $2.5 million roughly. That's what they're asking the city of Grand Island to step forward and pay for some of these other improvements now. If they just would have done the right thing and purchased the property for a true fair market value, then they wouldn't need the additional $2.5 million from the city.
I think there's a saying in real estate, it's worth what somebody's willing to pay for when it comes to a piece of land and or property. And perhaps, again, I don't have the FOIA. I haven't gone through the articles the way you have. How do you know for sure that it was going to be sold at $2 million?
Well, I don't know that it was going to be sold at $2 million, but I know that that's what two professionals here in Grand Island valued it at. I know that, it kind of bothered me, frankly, yesterday when Jaime Parr and then the board chair Boyd were on TV, and Jaime was kind of boastful, saying, "Yeah, but the original ask was 6.5 million, so we got it for 4.5. So, yay, look at us, we did a great job." Just because somebody asks for it doesn't mean that's what the value is, right? And then Boyd, when he's talking about the fact that, well, the people in Grand Island, don't worry about this. It's not that big a deal because it's not going to impact your property taxes. Well, you got a guy from O'Neill telling the people of Grand Island not to worry about where the tax money's coming from. I don't care if it's not coming from our property taxes. It's coming from our revenue, and it's going to come from our sales tax. And so it was really, to me, just kind of, I guess, confirmed the fact that when you're spending other people's money, maybe you have a little bit looser pocketbook. So the thing that I look at, so I deal all the time with my professional side of things with people that are selling their businesses. And, Doug Brunk had a wonderful veterinary practice. He was very well known, very high level equine veterinarian. That doesn't mean, though, that his practice was worth a tremendous amount of money, because he was the practice. And so somebody like him, who knew that he was going to be retiring, he would have been talking to other people leading up to his retirement about purchasing his practice. Well, he didn't have a buyer. At least he didn't have a buyer at the level that the state fair was willing to pay for it. And so when you have a quasi-governmental organization like the Nebraska State Fair that's not only buying property, but they're also buying now a business, I think that really blurs the lines, Dave. I don't even know that you have, I'm sure they went through the legal aspect of, do we have the authority or the ability to actually enter into this agreement? But when you start getting governmental entities that are buying businesses, I think that's a really slippery slope. And so for them to pay what they did for this practice, and then when Jaime said, we bought a tricked out veterinarian practice that we're going to sell, they overpaid by so much that they're going to get stuck with it. And so, now when you look at this situation, it's going to go from bad to worse. And so what they did with that real estate and that business practice is one thing. That's water under the bridge. You're not going to be able to go and bust that transaction. But my whole contention is that if they knew what they were doing and they actually would have purchased that for a fair price, they wouldn't need the $2.5 million additional ask from the city of Grand Island.
They have asked for the additional money. I believe they have said if they don't get the money from the city of Grand Island, they will still dip into the reserves to try to get the improvements done. With that being said, you used to be the mayor. You are no longer the mayor. You used to be on the board. You're no longer on the board. So what would you like to see done?
Well, number one, I think Mayor Steele.
How would you like to fix it if you were given the opportunity?
I think it's pretty simple. I think Mayor Steele should just simply say, we're not going to bring this forward, done deal. Because that tax revenue to me is incredibly valuable, and it's incredibly valuable to a lot of things that our city could definitely use. From a board standpoint, to be honest with you, I felt that they were probably a little bit, greedy, maybe coming in even and asking for it. It doesn't make sense to me, Dave. They got 20 million already. That 20 million. That 20 million should have been more than enough to do what they needed to do. And that's where I stand on that. I think the next step, if somebody's really going to go down the rabbit hole, is to really examine how that 20 million was spent. Because I know enough about procurement policies and how things are done there that I think that's a whole nother, discussion. And it's definitely something that I've relayed to Mike Foley, and I trust Mike to look into it. And so, but yeah, from my standpoint, wearing both of those hats, I would 100% say, let's just either the state fair just pull the request and say, you know what, this is too much. We've got enough going on they need to find a tenant or somebody to buy a veterinary practice. They do that, they've got their money also right there. And so, if they want to be really good partners with the city, just pull the request. And if they don't pull the request, then I think administration should pull it from ever, reaching a future agenda. If it reaches a future agenda, I think at least 6 council members should say no, and then be done with it.
This money would go towards the improvements and the repair of the south parking lot, which is used by the Nebraska State Fair for a couple of different events throughout the course of the year. It's used by the Heartland Events Center, which is owned by the city of Grand Island. But the parking lot itself is owned by the Hall County Livestock Improvement Association. What is their role in all of this, and why haven't they been reproached about possibly making these repairs, or why haven't they offered to make the repairs themselves? Because again, they own the land.
No, I think that's a great question, Dave, and it's something that I've asked many times. I can tell you. So the Hall County Livestock Association, better known as Fawner Park, the Nebraska State Fair supports Fawner Park tremendously. I will tell you that I firmly believe that if the state fair wouldn't have come here, Fawner Park would have closed. And so when you have all of this infrastructure that's on Fauner Park property, at some point in time, Fauner Park also has to step up and be a part of this. And I don't know at what level they're involved at, so I don't want to go too far with this particular project, but I know that historically, anytime something needs to be done infrastructure wise there, it's up to the state fair or the city, however, to pay for it. It's not Fauner Park. Fauner Park doesn't get involved with that stuff. And so, when you're looking at, the other thing, Dave, I guess when I look at this too, when I think about being a board member for the Nebraska State Fair, the Nebraska State Fair is an 11-day event. And everything that happens at that complex during the course of the year, the other, let's just call it 11 months, it's wonderful and it's great for the city of Grand Island. It's also, though, not the responsibility of the Nebraska State Fair. So that's where GILCA comes into play, Grand Island Livestock. And so you've got the Visitors Bureau, you've got Fauner Park, you've got the Nebraska State Fair, you've got all these different entities that are partners in that. But what I'm seeing is that everybody always looks back at the Nebraska State Fair and says, you've got the deeper pockets. We need you to help us figure this out. And so, when you think about a veterinarian practice, I want to come back to that real quick. The state fair hires veterinarians to come from all around the country to be on site and a part of the Nebraska State Fair. So we bring in vets from all over the place. We don't need an equine vet across the street for the Nebraska State Fair. The fair will operate just fine without an equine vet there. So then you have to ask the question, why is the Nebraska State Fair, the board members who their sole purpose is to make sure that there's an 11-day event that just goes outstanding for all the citizens of Nebraska, why are they making a financial purchase to purchase a veterinarian clinic? It makes no sense at all. If nothing else, they should have stepped away from that deal and said, you know what, we'll just have to figure out something else with parking, because $4.25 million is just absolutely asinine. We don't need it. We shouldn't be buying it. We shouldn't be involved in that. And so, coming all the way full circle to your point, Dave, about the other partners kicking in and helping out, absolutely. And Fauner Park is the main one. And from what I can tell you with the FOIA request, there's a lot of discussion with how that veterinarian practice that the state fair bought, how it will benefit Fauner Park and how it can benefit Fauner Park. And I just think that's absolutely out of bounds for the Nebraska State Fair Board of Directors to be making financial decisions that impact Fauner, not what they're there for.
Some questions remain unanswered. Jeremy Jensen, I appreciate your candid thoughts on this matter.
You bet, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Jamie, I certainly appreciate the time. I'm just going to get right to this. The State Fair is requesting $2.6 million from the city of Grand Island. The question is why?
Well, yeah, great question. The State Fair applied for and received ARPA funds. Therefore, the ask came from the fair. We're the recipient of the funds, so the ask came from us. Also, Dave, because ARPA is federal relief funds of $20 million coming directly into Grand Island, the city has an interest in that. And finally, because there was a memorandum signed in September of 2023 that noted that that would be the next step.
The ARPA funds of $20 million was approved by the Nebraska State Legislature in 2022. It hasn't even been 5 years. And again, we're now requesting another 12.5% for the Nebraska State Fair from the city of Grand Island. So I guess what happened to the $20 million already, and why another 12.5% increase is being asked for at this point?
Wow, that is an interesting question, Dave. And, the time has been short. I want to address that right away. ARPA is a very small window of time for projects to get complete. We are one of the few projects that are right on track with completing our full project before June of 2026. So we're very proud of the progress that has been made with ARPA. The original application that was submitted and that was approved, the original application was for 27 million. So the original gap was 7 million. Since that application was approved and the funds were awarded, efficient engineering and plan development have resulted in great savings. The current non-qualifying amount is actually closer to $2 million. That includes lighting, power, security camera, infrastructure. This request have never been about funding the Nebraska State Fair, nor was it an unexpected conversation with council.
I have property that I would love for somebody to make improvements to. Why is the state fair paying for these upgrades and improvements to land you don't own necessarily? And furthermore, since it's owned by the Hall County Livestock Improvement Association, what's their role financially in supporting these improvements?
Yeah, it's land that the fair does not own at all, not
Right.
necessarily. It's at all. The state fair qualified for, the state fair applied for, and the state fair was awarded the ARPA funds that support stormwater sewer relief, shovel-ready projects, and tourism. The state fair did not own land when ARPA funds were awarded, but the fair did and still does utilize Fauner Park to host our annual events. The ARPA funding application was submitted, awarded, and ultimately contracted with this same understanding. We're following the same rules that we applied for.
Now, there is some land that the Nebraska State Fair has recently purchased, and based on FOIA information he obtained, the former mayor and the former board member, Jeremy Jensen, has claimed the property purchased by you guys was overpaid for by more than $2 million. And it could only be circumstantial, obviously. He connects the asking price for right now with the overpayment of this property that he claims. So I guess how would you respond?
I would remind anybody who's concerned that the Nebraska State Fair is not a government entity. We do not have any right of eminent domain. We cannot force a sale at our price. Like any other non-government buyer, the fair must wait until a property becomes available and then we negotiate. Had the Fair Board not purchased the pasture land, the story could very well be that the fair failed to secure property that will sustain and protect growth of the organization for the next 100 years. The vet clinic property package, minus the pasture, is currently for sale. It is advertised locally and nationally. The fair is fielding inquiries and working to secure a buyer for this unique parcel. This was not a decision made lightly. The Fair Board made the decision that was in the best interest of the organization now, and so we move forward.
Just to be clear, the property that you guys are putting up for sale is for the veterinary clinic, not the 20 plus acres.
We purchased 20 acres of property. Of that, 15 acres is pasture land that the fair has been using for the last decade or more. So our real interest is a 15-acre pasture land. The package deal included the vet clinic and the other facilities on the remaining 5 acres.
Jamie, I appreciate your time and your enlightenment on the current situation with the Nebraska State Fair.
Thank you so much, Dave.